Good morning. It's both a pleasure and an honor to be here this morning with all of you. And before I start, I would like to thank the organizers of this wonderful event for all the work they've done for bringing us together. I would like to thank my distinguished fellow panelists, and I would like to thank you all for being here. I must confess that it's not every day that I get asked to speak about the meaning of life at 9 o'clock in the morning and be given 10 minutes to do so. So what I thought I would do this morning is talk about two worldviews that we're often told divide us, and show you in the spirit of common ground, in the spirit of this conference, that these worldviews in fact should unite us. So to set the stage for this brief presentation, I'd like to start with an analogy. Suppose we take, say, a hammer and ask the question, what is the purpose of a hammer? The answer is pretty obvious in this case. The main purpose of the hammer is to drive in nails, occasionally pull them out. Now suppose we ask, where does that purpose come from? Well, here too the answer is pretty obvious. The purpose of the hammer comes from the mind of its creator, namely us. We have a particular goal or purpose in mind, and so we create the hammer to fulfill that goal or purpose. Now suppose we take a snowflake, a beautiful, intricate structure, and ask the same question. What is the purpose of a snowflake? Well, here the answer is much less obvious. In fact, many would argue that a snowflake is the product of blind physical laws, and therefore that it has no purpose. Now this simple analogy nicely maps onto the two main worldviews that we're being asked to consider today. One is theism, which holds that creative forces, God or gods, have plans, goals, intentions, foresight, and purpose. Think of the hammer. The other view is what is known as naturalism. The idea that creative forces, in this case the laws of nature, have no plans, goals, intentions, foresight of purpose. Gravity doesn't care whether the clicker is going to fall or not. Natural selection doesn't care where evolution is going to go. Now you can see in these two worldviews some obvious tension. If naturalism is true then, and the forces that created the universe, life itself, and human beings have no goal or purpose, and therefore no meaning, then we're often asked to consider, how can life itself have purpose or meaning? In fact, this is a question that is often echoed by religious voices in our culture. This is Rick Warren, for example, who tells us that without God, life has no purpose, and without purpose, life has no meaning. Without meaning, life has no significance or hope. Another well-known religious voice, Joel Osteen, telling us that God is in control and he has a great plan and purpose for your life. This is William Lane Craig now, who tells us that if there is no God, then life itself becomes meaningless. Or that if God does not exist, then you're just a miscarriage of nature, thrust into a purposeless universe to live a purposeless life. All we are left with is despair. However widespread these assertions, these claims are in our culture, I think that they're overly pessimistic and miss something very important. The good news, I think, is that the perceived tension between theism and naturalism over questions of purpose and meaning is for the most part illusory. In other words, not real. What do I mean by this? Well, suppose that naturalism is true. So even if naturalism is true and there is no meaning or purpose of life, this does not mean that there is no purpose or meaning in life, to borrow a catchy formulation by Dan Barker. What I mean by this is something very simple. I mean that things like love, family, friendship, the arts, sports science, the occasional backache, helping others, striving to make the world a better place, can, and in fact do, bring purpose and meaning to both theists and non-theists, regardless of whether theism or naturalism is true. So you might now wonder, if there is no purpose or meaning of life, if naturalism is true, but there is purpose and meaning in life, then where do purpose and meaning come from? And here I would like to suggest that the answer is also rather straightforward. Think back of the example of the hammer. Purpose and meaning come from creatures that have certain kinds of minds, namely human minds. What's nice about this is that if purpose and meaning are properties of the human mind, then that means that they can be studied empirically, just like any other aspect of the mind. And what's even nicer is that this means that naturalism, through science, through psychology, through cognitive science, can help us better understand purpose and meaning, and you'll hear more about this from David in just a few moments. I'm providing general remarks, he'll fill in some of the details, and therefore can lead us, lead to progress for all of us, theists and non-theists. So the take-home message I would like to leave you with is that life may be without meaning, if naturalism is true, but it really doesn't matter because you bring the meaning to it. Purpose and meaning are inherently yours because you are free to create them for yourself. Who said that? I did, right here, right now. So I would like to leave you, if you would like to, you can find more about my work and my writing at julienmusolino.com. For those of you who are also on social media, you can find me on Twitter. And finally, if you want to read more about these issues, you can take a look at my recent book, The Soul Fallacy. Thank you very much, and I look forward to a wonderful conversation. Thank you. I'd like to add a few things to what we just heard and also the comments that were made earlier about the notion of belief and trying to transcend this. I think there's an important presupposition that we should spell out here, namely that if we want to engage in productive, fruitful dialogue, if we want to try to convince each other, we have to find a common universal language to do so. Mm-hmm. And certain forms of belief are really conversation stoppers. Yeah. As we heard, if you say, well, this is what I believe and that's it, then there's no conversation anymore. And I think that this common language is a form of rationality that we all have as human beings, that is an evolved capacity, a property of the mind, a capacity that allows us to engage with each other, reason, present arguments, present evidence, evaluate evidence. And I really think that this is something that is very important. It presupposes the entire enterprise that we are engaged in today. If we're hoping to make the world a better place, then we have to first identify what the problems are rationally, and we have to think of solutions that we hope are going to work. Well, how do we find out whether something is going to work or not? Hopefully we do so based on evidence. Does a policy work or not? And so I think it's very important to spell this out, and I think it goes well with what we heard a few moments ago from our other panelists. I'd like to add a couple of remarks to this. There's one reason that the United States is unique in the first world in having political candidates making it a point to declare their faith. They have to, and that's because if they didn't, that'd be the surest and fastest way to lose the election. If you look at polls, for example, we are, for better or worse, an unusually religious country compared to other first world countries, and that's been true for a long time. And so politicians just say what they have to say in that regard. The other thing is, I totally agree with what we heard from the Reverend, but I would add one thing. I think it is important to hear what somebody running for president has to say about their religious belief in the following sense. If they truly believe that the earth is 6,000 years old, that the Big Bang is a joke, I want to know about this because this person is going to have access to the nuclear codes. And so I want to know about that. And I want to know how sincere they are about that. I'm happy to comment briefly on this. I agree with you. I think that there is this form of insecurity. And I think it connects to different senses of religion that we talked about earlier. One of them being this sort of sense of awe and transcendence. another one being the sense of community, and the third one being belief in some supernatural entities or supernatural events happening in the world. If you look at history, this has really gone down. As science makes progress, the role of the supernatural shrinks more and more so. And so if you tie your religion to those kinds of beliefs as opposed to experiences, community, then certainly there's going to be some form of insecurity. As we understand more, those beliefs are going to become obsolete and move away. And there's a very, very clear historical trend. We used to believe that everything, the weather, human origins, etc., was governed by supernatural agents. Much, much, much less so today.